session tonight. So I'm just going to go through this. If at any time you have any questions, please, this is really informal, please just stop me and we'll talk about it. Okay. So our important dates coming up, we're going to talk about, and we'll go into the session 6 preview, Q&A, facilitation, and then wrap it up for the evening. So your next in-school session is next Thursday, and then we will have a training in between the two sessions, and then the next session is April 19th. The out-of-school experience are starting this week on March 8th, and then our culminating event or the celebration of the end of the year is May 9th through May 11th. And that'll be at East Professional Center, and you'll get more information. You should have some idea of when your school will be there, but we'll know specific times very soon, like within the next couple of weeks, and let you know. Okay, so session 6, my values and the impressions I make. And feel free to follow along in your curriculum guide if you want. So this session is really to help the students think more about what they value and how they're perceived by others and how they want to be perceived by others and how they can manage those impressions that they make. So you're going to kind of go through a series of activities that really gets them thinking about this and even practicing some of the soft skills that they can use to manage how they interact with others. So here are your session materials. So you've got most of these, or an example of most of these on your table. So you can, as I go through them, I'll pick them up and show you what we're looking for. So you start with your opening, then you have your Starburst icebreaker, then you get into the value card shuffle, which honestly is one of my favorite activities in our curriculum. So we'll talk about that. The impressions I make activity, break. Then there's a creating my brand activity, so each student will get to create their own brand or a logo that represents them. And then managing impressions, so that's where they get to practice those soft skills so they can have people perceive them as they want to be perceived. And then you have your reflection and debrief. Okay, so you review your previous session in the opening, and then there's a journal prompt, so they have a journal page in their tracker. We're just trying to connect things to what you've already done with the journal entry. So we ended last session thinking about multiple intelligences, and then basically have them think about how they use that information about themselves, or how did it manifest itself. It manifest over the last month, and how can we use that to continue to grow and improve. So always kind of trying to constantly reinforce what we've already talked about, and then bring it into the next session too. Okay, and then you've got a quote from Stedman Graham's Passport, Step 4, Master the Rules of the Road. So this is the kind of the theme of the day. You need guidelines to help keep you on track in pursuit of a better life. The rules are constant and enduring, they do not change. So this is the idea. We're going to talk about a lot about values with the students in this session, and the idea that their values should really kind of ground all of their behavior and all of their decisions. So once they've decided what's really important to them, and many of them probably already have decided, but this will kind of solidify the activity you're going to do. Once they have that, then they always want to kind of constantly be reflecting on that. And so all of the behaviors that they engage in, whatever they decide they want for themselves, should be grounded in those values. So that's what this idea kind of represents. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we start out with the Starburst icebreaker. So you'll see on your in your curriculum guide, but then also on your table, and you'll have these at your school, of course, in your session envelope. And basically, this is just a simple icebreaker. And so you pass around the Starburst bag. So you'll actually use the bag for an activity this time, which is nice. And have the students pick out, what do we say, 2 or 3 different Starburst colors from the bag. And then each of the colors, so you don't tell them what the colors mean ahead of time, you let them pick, and then each of the colors represent a different question they have to answer about themselves, okay? So we can take a couple minutes at your introduce yourself to your table mates and answer the question that corresponds to the color. Okay? Station with your group. So you'll want to give each student at least have them answer one question if you got enough time. You can stay there and have them answer multiple questions if you want. Okay. Okay. Any questions on that before we move on? Go ahead. Yeah. Okay, so then the next activity in session 6 is the True2U value card shuffle. And so there's some setup for this. You will have posters, so these values posters that you'll see on your table. These are already at the school for you. There's really 3 of them. So each of these posters lists different values. Do you all have them on your table? Some of you do? Some of you don't? Okay. So these are the values posters. So it's 3 posters. So these will be at the school for you, but you can see, I'll leave one with this table so you can see that. And then you all can have another one that you can see. And then you can, so these will be hung up in the room, and then all the students will also get a pack of cards that have all of these values on it. So as you're going through them, you can have the students refer to the pack of cards they'll have. So you should all have these on your table? See those? Okay. And you want to have hopefully enough room in your, if you do have enough room in your space, to have the students to be able to lay out all of their cards. And so, they'll each get, so they'll each get their own pack. If they don't have enough room, you can kind of try and work with the space as well as you can. And even they can hold them and just kind of go through them with you. Basically, you do an introduction, so you're going to learn about values today. They're the guiding principles for our goals, actions. And then, again, what I talked about earlier, once we decide on what our values are, that should really be kind of how we organize our lives. And so you can give an example of one of your values as the mentor and how it matches up to how you live your life. So I've always kind of said, at least in the last maybe 8 to 10 years of my life, I really have made love, or tried to make love, my core value. So I try and do things out of love and try and reflect on that. So it's actually driven a lot of the work that I do. I think a lot of what we do here is about love and things like that. So that's something I would share with the students. So whatever is what fits with your life, you can share with them. And then you can ask students to discuss what values they think the following people or characters have. So this is listed in your curriculum guide. So we have LeBron James. So after going through all of these values and getting some idea of what we're looking for, have the students kind of reflect on what do they think LeBron values? How does he live? What does he do? How does he show what he values? So some of our examples were achievement. Clearly he's achievement oriented. He's the greatest basketball player ever, arguably. Community, focus a lot on community, a lot on family. And there might be other answers too, right? But it's just kind of getting them to think about, you see this person, they're acting a certain way, they make decisions, what's important to them, how they want to organize their lives. And then have them pick 3 cards. So after they've laid out the cards or kind of gone through them, they pick 3, lay them in front of them. Have students review classmates' values, so have them, if you have the space, have them walk around and look at what the other students are doing, and then return for a large group discussion. So I want to give you some time with these values at your table, so if you want to look through the decks and talk amongst yourselves if you'd like, about what kind of your top 3 values are, or at least what is 1 or 2 values that are really important to you. Okay? So take some time there, please. for some discussion. Okay, so we're going to bring it back together and we'll talk a bit about it. So these are your large group discussion questions. So you have the students talk about which 3 values they chose and why. And then have them think about, of their top 3, what's the number 1 most important. And then that you can talk about this idea of a core value. So that's their core value, their number 1 value. And at the bottom of page 6.7 in your book, there's kind of a definition of core value. Everything you should do should somehow relate back to that value. And then there's an example. So some people make kindness their core value and try to make everything they do based on kindness. And if something isn't based on kindness, then they try and take a minute and pause and reflect and say, how can I act out of kindness instead of just kind of moving forward. Okay? And then you can talk to them about situations they've been in where they wanted to stick to their values, but it was hard to. So a lot of times that's true, right? So you have these principles that you want to live by. I'm sure you've all experienced that. But then someone will do something or they'll say something, and you might go gut reaction, instinct is not to necessarily follow that kindness or that love value. But how do you manage that situation, right? And talk to the 8th graders about that. And so there's a list of some approaches maybe on page 6.8. One being to pause and reflect. So let me just take a moment rather than just responding, rather than just reacting. I'm going to try and calm myself down. Think before talking and acting. Try to take a step back or remove yourself from the situation. So if something's not in line with your value, you need to take some time to kind of reflect on that, and if you need to, remove yourself from that. Okay? And then there's a place in their tracker, so on their Who I Am page, that orange page that they've been filling in all year, to record their values. So whatever top 3 they come up with, they can take some time, have them record that in their tracker at the end of this activity. Okay? And that's basically that activity. And I think it can spur some really nice conversation in your group. So hopefully at your table you saw that kind of coming out. And then with the 8th graders, they enjoy this too. They like to, once they get in the right situations, like to reflect and like to think about how they're responding to situations. So, any questions on that activity? Okay, so then the next one is the impressions I make. And this starts with some posters again. So these are what the impressions I make posters look like. And the students also have this exact same sheet in their trackers. So as you're going through this, they can follow along in their trackers. It should be in your curriculum guides as well. Okay? And basically what this activity is getting them to think about the impressions that they make on different groups of people. So this first worksheet, or this first poster, you can see at the top, it says, how do you think others perceive you? Be as honest as possible. And then there's 3 different groups of people that are listed. So the first one are parents or guardians, the second is friends, and people you first meet. So what you'll do with them is you'll go through this kind of list of terms with them, make sure they understand what all of these terms mean. So you can see it's from creative to sarcastic to judgmental to strong. Okay? Lots of different ways to think about how they're making impressions. And then you'll give students 3 different colored crayons. And they'll choose a crayon color for each of those groups I just listed. So parents and guardians will get 1 color, friends will get another color, and people they first meet. And they mark that color on their worksheet next to that group of people. And then they go through and reflect upon how the top 5 attributes that they think that their parents or guardians see in them. So the impressions they're giving to that group of people. Okay? And they put a little, so let's say they pick purple for that color. They put a little purple line next to those top 5. Okay? In their tracker. Then they go on to friends, so maybe they pick yellow for that. They put yellow up here, next to friends, go through top 5 for friends. Can be the same, or some of them can overlap, but it can be totally different too. So we really want them to take some time to think about how do you think these different groups are viewing you, based on basically how you're acting, or the impressions that you give off. And then lastly, people that first meet you. So when people, yeah?
Go ahead now.
Okay. So when people first meet you, how do they think people see them? Okay, and they pick the top 5 for that in a different color, so maybe green for that, whatever. Yeah.
I remember when we did this last year, and I had the girls, we had the girls. When we got to the part about the friends, they were really defensive. I don't care, I'll have friends. I don't care what people think about me. You know, it was really hard for them to kind of admit that how people, the impression that they make on people affects them. Like they really just want to be tough and pretend like, I don't care what impression I make on people, I'm just going to do what I want to do.
Okay. So I don't know if everyone heard that, but she's saying last year when she did this activity, they were working with girls, and the girls got defensive when they got to the friends category, and basically were like, I don't care what people think of me. So how did you respond when they did that?
It was easy to kind of go back to the people that you don't know, and then go back to the friends, because people who don't know them, and I think we did a simulation of like a job interview or something. I don't know what's coming.
Yeah, something.
But that kind of helped them understand the importance of the impression, and then we have to go back and say, you know, now make that same comparison. It was tough, though. I was actually when I was
Okay. Yeah, I think it sounds like you handled it great. I think I would also say, well, as an adult, I do think about this too. I mean, I care about what my friends think. I mean, I probably care about what my friends think more than a lot of other people, right? Because I want to have that relationship with them, and it's important to me. I've chosen to be friends with them for a reason. And so, while I try not to focus too much on that or mold who I am too much to meet their expectations, it's a natural human thing. We're social beings. It's natural to kind of want that connection with people. Yes?
Yeah, one second. You know, I think, are you a parent?
I am.
Okay, you have teenager?
She's 12.
Okay, well, she's there. So, I was just gonna say, and being a parent, I think that attitude is part of the malaise of being adolescent, of being, I know it, but really don't. I don't need you, but yet I do. Because they actually, and I say this, they need you probably more now, even though, we know, infants and raising. I think they need you more at this stage than ever. And you sort of have to, I feel, walk a mile in their shoes, because, and we've all done that. I mean, go talk to your parents. We've all had this, I'm omnipotent, I know you're not. And so you really do have to kind of, I would say, understanding is love. And because I had to do that, they were kind of coming back a little combative. I had to remind myself, these are 8th graders. This is what they feel. So I'm trying to understand that and work with it. If that helps.
That's nice. Thank you. So yeah, and do your best with this. If they do get a little defensive about certain categories, that's okay. I mean, you don't have to push them too hard. But the idea is really just to get them thinking about how they might be portraying themselves differently to different groups, and how eventually we'll get to the point where they can, and they probably know this even, but they can control that, and they have power over that, because they're in charge of how they act, and they're in charge of the impressions that they give. So if they're doing this first sheet in their tracker, how do others perceive you? Kind of go through the list. Okay, and then you can have a group discussion. Did you find it hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes and think about the impressions you make? Did you mark different traits for different groups of people? people? Why do you think they're different? Did anything surprise you? Kind of just go through this conversation with them. And you know, if something does come up where they seem a little defensive, like try and kind of explore that with them. Well, why is it like that? Like, why do you feel that you don't care about your friends, what they think, or why do you care more about what one group thinks than the other? Things like that. Why do you think people form these opinions of you? And then which of the groups do you think has the most accurate understanding of who you are? So that, I think that's a really interesting question too. After you've reflected on these different groups, who do you think really knows you and why? And then you have to move on to the second half of the sheet. So I think it'll probably be a flip page in their tracker. And this is the same list of attributes. This time they have a crayon and they're identifying the top 5 traits they want to be seen as. Okay, so how do you want people to see you? And then have them go through that. So after they've done that, then you come back together for another discussion. Okay? And we're going to do a little comparison between the two halves of the activity. So you have these characteristics that you think you present to people. You have these characteristics that you want to present to people. Are they matching up? If they're not matching up, why aren't they matching up? And talk about how they have the power, the control. If they're living by their values, if they want people to, you know, see them in a certain way, they can make that a reality. It's up to them as to how they present themselves. Do you even try and make your ideal impression upon people? So that's a really interesting question too. So you say you want to be this one thing. You say you want to live your life in a certain manner, with a certain core value. But do you even really try and live up to that? Or kind of, is there a tension there? What's the tension? Okay? Do we have control? And then what are the challenges you face when trying to meet that impression? So we can have these ideals, but then again, you're going to get in different situations. You're going to be around different groups of people, so you can refer back to that first page and think about, well, yeah, I am presenting myself in different ways to different people, and why do I do that? And what are those pressures there, the social, you know, kind of norms within these different groups that make me do that? You can have some really interesting conversations with them. And kind of, you can let it take it where it will go. If that makes sense. And then what do you think you can do on a day-to-day basis to try to leave the impression you want? So again, thinking about controlling your behavior, controlling what you want to give to people, what can we do? Even small little things, right? That's how you start. I can say thank you every time someone does something for me. Yes?
So this kind of activity requires some pretty deep thinking on the part of the kids. And I think our experience with our group is that many of the girls are pretty good at that, but the boys are pretty quiet. And I just wondered about other people's experience like that. The tricks for bringing the boys out.
Okay. So I'm trying to repeat the question so that for the recording people can hear. But he's asking, some of his students are quite quiet and some are a little more gregarious, and how do we bring out the more quiet ones to get them to reflect and share on things, especially something as kind of important and personal as this. We have a couple of comments, yes.
That's my year 3. I would say that a lot of the boys will gravitate towards sports, so I would use a movie or a sports figure. That's going to pick up on anything current that pull into the story, that ties to their moment. I even bring in things about myself. I had a whole yearbook out last session showing actually my picture of me and sports team, and to show them I'm a real human, you know. So I went to 8th grade too in high school, and so I did a similar program like this when I was in 8th grade. So I tie in how that helped me and so it helped them as well. So that gets their attention, you know. And then so last year I think I made the comment of you know, if you guys want me here, I can just go back to work there. No, stay. And I said, well, put me in your shoes. What do you want to get out of me being here? And that gets me talking. I said, well, I'm scared about meeting people, or, I like animals, so I think I'm caring. We can start to talk about something, but, if you get to their level, most of them will start talking, and then you can either piggyback off on the student, or you give them an example that you think they might like, and you just say, what do you like? And then in that example, there's caring, or there's this, or that, and then, I kind of paint a picture and let them kind of help me finish, start off with.
That's great.
I get them started on, or like, if I say, he's courageous, pick somebody else in class, you think is this one, oh, Johnny, he's the one that, they'll find somebody to connect to it, so, I trick them into talking to me.
Those are all.
They don't know what I'm doing, yes.
So I'd say finding something they relate to and trying to bring that in as much as possible, relating it back to yourself when you were in 8th grade. Anything else that kind of paraphrased?
Yeah, technology, current sports teams.
Current sports teams, technology, great ideas. And especially for this activity, what you could talk about is, if you want to go down that road of bringing in something that is current and interesting to them, maybe thinking about, so if you want to talk about sports, for example, go back to LeBron and say, how do you think what impression do you think people have of LeBron when they first meet him? What do you think is the impression he gives people in his family? How do you think those differ? And so maybe some kind of conversations like that, so you can use an example that they kind of latch onto.
Or I'll ask them what sport do you like, or what TV show you watch. Hopefully I've seen the show that I kind of tie into it, but if not, I'll say, who's the leading character, what do they do? And they teach me about the show, why do you like it? And then if I don't know the program, and they say, well, that's the leading character, and I say, well, that sounds like this quality,
Right.
So
That's a great example. Yeah. So a TV show they like and character on that TV show. Nice. Yes.
So in our group, I can't say it's gender related, it's not that, some girls are quiet, some boys are quiet. So sometimes what we try to do is break them into really small groups, because some of the kids, you can tell they're just shy, they don't feel comfortable speaking like how they feel, their opinions in a big group. So we break them down into smaller groups, and sometimes they'll be more vocal.
That's a good suggestion. So breaking them into smaller groups, or even if you can get some one-on-one time with one of them that seems especially shy, to kind of go through their list with them and just engage in a little conversation. Like maybe they don't have to present to the whole group. That's okay. Just trying to get them where they are.
Yeah, one-on-ones are doing great. It's just
Okay.
hard to do that with
Sure.
full people.
Yeah, absolutely. But as they're filling this in, you can kind of also be walking around and kind of make those small connections too. Yes.
We thrived on. Well, with the IM home, that was really hard for them, for anyone to be willing to come up and share. And it's, then we said, hey, if you share, we'll give you this cookie snack. And you always get that one kid. And we did. And then once one did it, then some others, but the small group was really good. But, it was a lot of, we were short, facilitator too last time, so we didn't have the luxury of breaking out as much as we probably would have liked to, so Roger is
Or positive reinforcement is yeah. So using the snacks, using the Starburst, and then I think you're right, once you get especially one or two going, then others are kind of more apt to join in too.
And another thing you could do is, if you have a group of like 10, you could tell them at the beginning, you could say, there's 10 of you all, and I want you all to say something, so you can just start on the table. Joe, Sam, that way they know, okay, I gotta prep myself, I'm gonna be next, and then that way you give each person an opportunity to say something, and you go around the table. So we kind of had 3 or 4 groups, and when somebody from each of those tables speaks, everybody has something to say.
Does that help? I think you guys help. Okay. And then you can also have a conversation about stereotypes too, right here. So once you've talked about the impressions and how different people are viewing the students, the idea is like sometimes people make incorrect assumptions about you, and that's not really on you, that's on them. And we can't control that, but we can control how we act and how we present to ourselves. And how you can have some really nice conversations there, I think. Okay? And that's basically that activity. So any questions there? Yes?
Yeah, one thing I want to add to the second. When I was a kid, I found that if I tried to make him see me as a human with my own mistakes and faults and share it with them, and I'm a father, so I have 5 kids, so I had my own mistakes. So once I start sharing stories with them, they can connect. Once they connect, you got their attention. And most importantly, you start building on that trust that you're gaining or you're growing. That's really critical. But I found it to work with most of the kids. They actually appreciate it when you share with them, when they see you as just not a person like them, you know.
Right. Absolutely. So making those connections, and I think these two activities that we just talked about are great ways to do that with them too. So talk about your values, talk about what's important to you, and share that with them. Talk about your struggles with making impressions with people and how you act differently in different situations, and you're aware of that and the tension you feel about that. I think that's a great point you make. That's going to make them see you. The common humanity is going to connect you at that point, and then know how to overcome it a little more. Thank you. Okay, and then we move on to creating my brand. And this is the idea of really getting students to, again, building on that impression they make, the idea that they can have control over what they present, they can create a brand for themselves. So on your tables and in your packets at the school, we have these different materials that go with this activity. So this is the brand interview packet. So there will be enough of these for each student. Right now they're big on your table like this. But they'll be folded in little packets at the school. Also, at the school, in your envelopes, you'll have some of these brand flashcards. This will be one of the examples you can use at the beginning as you're introducing this concept to the students. So there should be a few on your table for that. And then the last material for this activity are these little bendable sticks. So these are kind of like Play-Doh that the students will use to actually build a 3D version of their brand. Okay, so the first step is to give every student one of their brand pamphlets. And then you can introduce the concept of brand by directing students' attention to the concept of brand, logo, and tagline that are on the front of their packet. So down here in the key terms, and you can kind of talk through the differences there. And then there's some flashcards, and you can demonstrate the various brands and discuss what the students think about when they see those brands. So sometimes I feel like brand can be a little kind of an abstract concept. If you think logo, then what does brand mean other than logo? The way I kind of think about it is, so you see the physical logo, but the brand is what you feel or your experiences when you see that, right? So it's kind of the message behind the physical logo. And so in the previous activity, when the students were thinking about what they want to portray to others or what their values are, those are kind of the feelings that they want to leave people with. Okay, so they can kind of build their brand from those activities. Like if you want to live by love, that's your core value, and you want people to always think of you as a kind person. So those are things that would build your brand. And then you can build a physical logo that kind of represents that piece of you. Okay? And so you can talk to the students about that. And then what you do is you hold up these flashcards and you say, okay, what is this? MTV. Okay, what do you think MTV's brand is? So that feeling or those kind of characteristics behind what this represents. Youth, video, kind of cutting edge music, stuff like that. Absolutely. So you see this and basically it's eliciting those feelings or those thoughts, even though it's just this M and some letters, right? It doesn't really mean that, but that's what you associate with it. What about this one?
Disney, my world.
Okay, so it's Disney. What does Disney mean? Fun, youth,
Expensive.
right. So that's the brand they build for themselves. And then, last one, McDonald's, okay. Calories, hungry, okay. All right, maybe fast, cheap eats, stuff like that, right? Okay. So you kind of have those conversations, and you'll have different examples in your actual packet. So there's a collection I gave us, and we kind of split them up. But it'll all be very recognizable, and you can have those talk to them. Okay, so then people also develop brands. When you think about Michelle Obama, what are some of the ways that she is described? So how would people describe Michelle Obama?
Stylish,
Smart.
Very nice, yes. So intelligent, stylish, kind, fit. Okay, so these are all ideals that she has decided to live by. So those are those impressions she wants to give people, right? And she kind of maintains this brand as she goes through her life by the decisions she makes, the clothes she wears, the activities she engages with, the behaviors she demonstrates. She's always, I mean, maybe not consciously, although I think she probably is in some way, but always maintaining that brand, right? What does she do to promote her brand? So she does a lot of different things, and some of those things I just listed. Appearance, she makes conscious decisions about how she wants to portray it and how she behaves. And then you can talk to students how they can create their own brands. So again, based on those previous activities, try and keep tying things back together. You want to make certain impressions upon people, that's building your brand there. So how you do that is what maintains your brand. So they can work in pairs, and they're going to work through this packet, basically. So they complete the questions, so you can look at this. So things you're good at. If a friend described you, what would be 2 positive words he or she could use so they can refer back to that other sheet they've just done. If you were a car, an animal, what would you be? What positive words would you use to describe? Those 2 positive words a teacher, parent, or guardian would use to describe. So again, use that previous impressions activity to help them here too, okay? And then they can open up the word bank in the back, and then or in the middle, I'm sorry. Place a check mark next to the words that describe you. Circle the attributes you would like to be true about you, but what you need to practice. So again, what do you want people to see you as? So they can use this. You can, again, use that impressions they make activity to all kind of build this together. And then once they do that, on the back of this is where they can actually build their brand. So they're going to build some kind of representation, their logo that represents their brand. Okay, so whatever is important to them. So again, if I want to focus on love in my life, I'm probably going to put a heart in my brand, my logo at some point. Things like that. So they can sketch on here with the markers that you have for your group or pens. And then again, they'll get the bendable sticks, and then they can make a 3D rendition of whatever logo they've created. Okay? And then basically, you can have them share out. So have them present their different bendable sticks. And you can open these and play with them if you want to check them out. They come apart so they can actually use the different sticks to make different parts of the logo. And then you go around the room and have them share. Okay? Any questions there?
Yes. This is a challenge.
It's like a little envelope. There's like a sticky have the values cards that each student gets, and then in each envelope, there should be another deck of cards. These are not cut up into cards, but these should be on your table. They're also in your curriculum guide. And basically, this is just a way for students to practice soft skills. So we've talked a lot about, in your session, you talked to a lot of them about how they want to portray themselves, how they want to act, and how they have control over that. This is a way to practice some of those skills that could make favorable impressions. So like for example, on the soft skills, the first card here is introduce yourself, say hello, my name is, in a confident manner. So this will be part of the deck, you pull it out, you talk about it with the group, and then you all demonstrate it. So you have them introduce themselves, you come in, you introduce yourself, and kind of talk about why that's important. Shake hands, so have them practice that. A nice firm handshake, and you can talk about why that's important. Making eye contact, asking someone how they are and being attentive while they answer and really listening. So you can see there the different skills that you'll practice with them. We have a tip here, you can consider doing this activity in the context of a mock job interview. So kind of go through all of them and then have them practice you be their interviewer and have them come in, introduce themselves, sit down, and have to use these soft skills in that context. Okay? So this one is, relatively straightforward, but it gets them up and about and they can move around and they can practice these skills. Something that can be fun is if you feel comfortable doing so, you can demonstrate 2 ways of performing each skill. So the wrong way and the right way. You can come in there like all crazy and they'll love it if you do that. And then you'll talk about why that's not the way to do it if you want to present a certain way. Demonstrate with mentors or can work in pairs. And then there's a group discussion. How did you feel when you introduced yourself in a professional manner? Do you feel like it's hard to utilize the skills? Do you think you utilize the skills already? Just have those kind of conversations. Okay, and then you're going to close out the session. So, recap, share the activities they like, provide feedback, and then you'll have those student surveys as well. Okay? Any questions on the session? Should be a fun one, I think, and pretty engaging for the students. It's one of my favorites. Okay, and if you do have any questions, you can feel free to contact me or Khalid.